Hey folks, so if you'll think back, not too long ago, the Fed chief, Jerome Powell, and Janet Yellen both came out stating that inflation had reached its peak, and the news media took off with it. They started talking about it all over the place. It was everywhere. And for a little while, that's all you heard. But just like when they all claimed that inflation was transitory or temporary, it was all a lie. It was all wrong. The new CPI numbers have come out, and we were sitting at an inflation rate of somewhere around 7.5 to 8%. Now, I believe the numbers is more along the lines of 9%. Okay, so understand this though. As I've said in previous videos, that the Fed and the government in general, and even the news media, but particularly the Fed, they manipulate the inflation rate. All the numbers that are used to calculate the inflation rate, they manipulate it. This is done by eliminating certain items from the calculation. Certain things like fuel, energy costs are not calculated. Mortgages are not calculated. And there's a couple of other things I can't remember offhand that are not calculated in figuring what the inflation rate is. So when they say the inflation rate is like 8% or 9%, understand that they've taken certain things out. Also understand that once upon a time, the inflation rate used to be calculated by watching the price of a certain fixed set of goods, a fixed basket of goods. For example, they would have specific items that they would watch and note the prices of, and they would look at those same items constantly every time they calculated the new inflation rate. Well, now it's no longer a fixed basket of goods. What they do is they substitute. And for example, if beef goes up 20-something% and people stop buying beef, well, they look at it and say, instead of calculating that price, that commodity price, we'll say, okay, let's just say somebody's not buying beef, they're buying chicken or they're buying pork or whatever, and because that price is cheaper, and we'll use that price instead. So it's through manipulation and fudgery like that. I know that's not a word, but it ought to be because the government does it so much. But it's by manipulating and skewing the numbers like that they can keep the inflation rate down. Now, if you actually sat down and calculated the inflation rate the way they calculated it back in the 1960s, 1970s, even the early 1980s, before they changed the way they calculate it, we would probably be sitting at an inflation rate somewhere between, I would say, 25 and 30% right now. That would be my estimate. That would be my opinion. Because, like I said, there's a lot of things that they don't calculate. They don't add in to the equation. They do a lot of substitutions. And a lot of the numbers are just outright wrong, because they don't want to give the actual number. Because they know that if they come out and say, okay, inflation is 30%, that's going to create mass panic. And people will start making runs on banks. They'll start making runs on grocery stores and pharmacies and you name it. It's going to create a general panic in the population. And the government, as incompetent and inefficient as they are, they know that if there's a panic, it's going to be devastating to this country. It's going to be devastating to our economy. So while they may be incompetent or at least come off like that and make what appear to be some extremely stupid comments, observations, or even take stupid, ridiculous, or absurd actions, they know they have to avoid a panic. Even if this is something that they are intentionally trying to do, which is what I believe they're doing. I believe all of this is an intentional attack, an intentional effort to break down the economic system in this country so that they can replace it with something else being extremely socialist, if not communist. It's the whole Build Back Better, Great Reset, whatever you want to call it. I believe it's all the same thing. So they know that even though they want to, even if that's the case, even if I am right about that, and that's what they're doing, it's all intentional, they know that they can't be too obvious, too blunt about it. They can't come out and say, okay, this is what's happening, because then people will panic. And panic is not good, even for trying to break down the country. You want to create division and you want to create chaos, but it needs to be a controlled chaos. You want the panic, you want the riots to happen when and where you want it to be, where it would be most effective. So naturally, they're not going to give anybody the real inflation rate. And like I say, my theory, my estimate of it, and again, it's my own opinion, I believe the inflation rate is floating somewhere around 25 to 30%. Well, like I got a little off track, but with the CPI numbers coming out, it's indicated that inflation has not reached its peak, that it's actually continuing higher, which flies in the face of everybody saying inflation has peaked and is starting back down slowly, which is just a repeat again of back when they said inflation is just transitory, it's just temporary. We all realize now, no, it's not. This is something that's going to continue to happen. It's going to continue to go up, I believe. Things are going to continue to get more and more expensive. And every incident, every crisis, everything that strains our supply system, our supply chain, any kind of little event, even small ones now, that put a strain on our supply chain, add to the inflation. And it's my thought that at this point, we are past the point of control. And I would even go so far as to say past the point of no return. I believe we've passed the point where the Fed can control this inflation. I believe they've actually lost control of it. They were trying to intentionally cause a transition here through chaos and inflation, and I believe that they may have lost control. If they haven't, they're just trying to build and build and build. I'm not sure which. I kind of want to say that they've actually lost control, but they're going to let it. They're going to let it run. So, again, inflation is going to continue to rise. Things are going to continue to get more expensive. We're going to see more shortages. Now, over the past month, every time I've gone to the local Walmart here, I've noticed that there's been large numbers of pallets just sitting in the aisles, not being offloaded, and they're blocking the aisles. You can't. There's some aisles you can't even get down in our store. Um, and in a lot of places, the shelves look absolutely full, and they've got overstock just sitting on the floor. And people are saying things like, well, see, look at this. So if you look at all these pallets, you look at all these items here, there's no shortages. Well, I beg to differ, because what you're seeing, I think, is where all of this stuff that was sitting on containers for months and months and months, actually for even a year now, it was sitting in containers on the dock and sitting in containers on ships out off the coast. I believe that stuff is finally hitting the stores, but it's only hitting certain stores. Who ordered the majority of this stuff? Walmart, Target, Sam's Club, BJ's, places like that are the ones that ordered the bulk of that material, that product. So naturally, when they start offloading those containers, the stores are getting months worth of orders in all at once now. But the majority of that, if you'll look at what's sitting in the stores, the majority of that are non-perishable, cheap plastic goods, some electronics. My local Walmart got in a huge shipment of TVs. So, they were sitting on the floor in boxes lined down aisles. They had so many. I would estimate they probably had somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe 60 or 70 TVs just in the floor. That's not counting on the shelves or on the pallets that they normally have sitting in front of electronics. These were sitting on the floor directly. It looked like they were getting ready for Black Friday, is what it looked like. And that was a couple of weeks ago. But now they still have multiple pallets sitting around, but it's all non-perishable, household goods, some electronics, a lot of cheap plastic stuff. You got toys, you got some hardware. What you're not seeing are pallets and pallets of food. At least I haven't seen that in my store. You go into the food section, you're still seeing thin spots. You're still seeing random empty spots on the shelves. The meat department still looks really, really low, and in some cases, almost nothing in the coolers. So, all of these products, I think, are just, again, non-perishable items that have been sitting in these containers that they're suddenly getting. But the food is not coming in, at least not to the Walmart. Now, I've got another grocery store here called Little Giant. They always seem fully stocked. I haven't noticed any shortages in there for quite a while. I mean, during the early part of the pandemic, yeah, they had some low spots, but they've maintained stock pretty well. All right, another store that I have, it's one of those cost plus markets, Food Depot. You go in there, you see shortages. You see thin spots. You see items being picked over. So it all really depends on what store you're going into as to whether you see these shortages. But I believe this inflation is going to continue to go up. You're going to continue to see the shortages, particularly in food. And the shortages are going to hit anything that requires chips, microchips. You're going to see it in fuel, car parts. I hit a deer a while back. Actually, I hit 2 deer. in the same spot over a period of 2 days. So I had to have some body work done to my truck. I had to have the grill and bumper and a whole bunch of other stuff repaired. It took them 5 weeks to finally get the grill in to put on my truck. Now, fortunately, the truck I have, I was still able to drive it. It's not something that was preventing me from driving my truck. But it took them a long time to get it in, and then I had to go back down to the shop while they put it back on. So, and I'm hearing a lot of reports of people having their vehicle in the shop for weeks, if not months at a time, because they're waiting on parts. So there's a lot of shortages still going on. It may not look like it in some areas, but in other areas, it's getting really, really critical. Okay, so the next article that I want to talk about, and again, as always, I'll have links to these articles in the description, but the next thing that I wanted to talk about was, I read an article this afternoon stating that gas had broken $5 a gallon, a $5 a gallon national average for the first time in history. For the first time in history, the national average of gas is over $5 a gallon. In my area, it's now $4.59 a gallon, which is considerably lower than a lot of other places. But we sat at $4.29 for a long time, and then within about a week or two, it went from $4.29 to $4.59. Now, add to that, Kemp extended our gas tax holiday, so we did get a reprieve from the gas tax being reinstated, but he only extended it 2 weeks. If I'm not mistaken, yeah, he extended it on the 1st, so that means tomorrow is the last day of that gas tax extension. I don't know what's going to happen. If he extends it again, I don't know. If not, I'm expecting gas to suddenly hit $5 a gallon once the gas tax gets reinstated. I'm expecting at least a 30-cent increase and probably more than that. So right now we're sitting at $4.59, and if I remember right, the 2-week extension of the gas tax holiday, where we don't pay gas tax, he signed that on the 1st, so that will expire tomorrow. Either that's this afternoon or tomorrow. So brace yourselves for that if you live in Georgia. There's going to be at least a 25, 30 cent increase just by that expiring. And I would expect the price to go up more than that. Now, here's another thing that happened. Smithfield Foods in Beaver County, Utah. I believe the name of the town is Milford, but I'm not positive. I didn't print out the article, but it is linked down below. Smithfield Foods is downsizing. So, as a result, Smithfield Foods is the county's largest employer, and it's also the largest hog operation in the United States. Because they are downsizing, Beaver County has declared an economic emergency. The board says the company's issue doesn't stem from within Utah, and there's no reason why issues in another state would cause them to downsize in Utah. It has to be a company-wide issue. But what some people aren't taking into consideration is Smithfield Foods is owned by a Chinese company. They're owned by China now. They were bought out by China a few years ago. China bought Smithfield Foods, so they bought the largest hog operation in the United States, and now they're downsizing. Is this related to tensions between the U.S. and China over Taiwan? Is it one way they're trying to cause more economic damage to try to keep us out of that conflict? And I say conflict because it will lead to that. I honestly believe China is going to try to invade and take control of Taiwan. And the United States has already said they will intervene. And China's already said that that would be an act of war. So, because they claim Taiwan, so you know where that's going. It's going to be another front on this new world war that we're walking into. But is this downsizing a way for China to exert some kind of economic damage or control? Or is it because China is experiencing some economic issues themselves? Because right now, China's economy is actually taking a hit because of lockdowns, and to be honest, all economies across the world, all countries, their economies are tanking right now. The stock market is down globally. So it's not just a U.S. thing. It's a global thing right now. A lot of it is on the fact that the Fed is talking about 0.75% or 0.75 point rate hike, three quarters of a point, which is not something that they usually do. It's a very large increase that they're looking at, that they're talking about. And if they do that, that signals that the Fed doesn't believe that they have inflation under control, which I can tell you right now they don't. So they have no control over inflation, and that's going to signal to the markets that they have no control, and that's why the markets are going down. And if they actually do make that increase, it's probably going to go down even more. So, is that downsizing due to possible tension between the U.S. and China over Taiwan, or is it due to all economies globally being strained and in decline right now? Let's put it this way, folks. Trying to figure this out. I'm trying to figure out the right way to say this. We are already in a recession. They're not saying it, but we are already in an extreme recession right now. Mainstream media won't say it. The Fed won't say it. But we are. And we are headed for a new depression. All the signs are there. All the signs are there. If you look back, we're seeing a lot of parallels between the 1918 Spanish flu, the Depression in the 20s, which led up to the Roaring 20s, which then led up to the Great Depression of the 30s. We're seeing parallels between that era and now. We had our own pandemic. We had a decline. Then we had a slight recovery. And now everything's just seems like it's falling apart. Everything's getting more expensive. Inflation is on the rise and doesn't seem anywhere near stopping. And we're looking at a new world war, which the Depression led into World War II. So you see the similarities. It's eerie how things are going and how much it looks like those decades back then. So we're in a recession. I know I'm rambling a lot. I apologize for that. I have a bad tendency to do that, and I do apologize. Um, we're in a recession. I believe we're going into a depression. And I honestly believe that this is going to be worse than the Great Depression. We're going to go into another Great Depression, and I believe it's going to be worse than the first one. It's going to be much harder for many reasons. Some of which are the fact that back then people knew how to do things. People were still used to storing up food for the winter. People had pantries, deep pantries for getting by till the next harvest. You would harvest, you'd can things, you'd put things up. And I've seen pictures of large walk-in pantries that were just crammed wall to wall with canning jars full of food. That used to be the norm back then. People knew how to do things. They knew how to, they had skills. They knew how to do things themselves. They weren't trapped into having to go to somebody else to have something done for them. They knew how to do it themselves, and if they didn't know how to do it themselves, they learned. They quickly learned. A lot of people had gardens. A lot of people had farms. And America had a very strong industrial manufacturing base. Okay, you look at America now, most people, not including the people watching this video most likely, most preppers have more food than the average person, but most people, the average person, doesn't even have 2 or 3 days worth of food in their house. I've read newspaper articles where people stored clothes in their ovens, stored shoes in their ovens because they didn't use their ovens to cook. Man, mosquitoes are bad today. Hold on one second, folks. Sorry about that, folks. The mosquitoes are actually bad out here today. I had to light a little citronella candle down here. But as I was saying, a lot of people don't even have 2 or 3 days worth of food in their house. There's a lot of people that don't buy groceries because they don't cook. They don't know how to cook. Cooking is a lost skill to a lot of people. Now, there's a lot of people that love to cook, but there's a lot of people I don't think they could boil water. And that's a shame because cooking is essential. Being able to produce food and prepare that food for you and your family, that's an essential skill. But not only do people not have food in their house, the majority of people don't have gardens, although that is changing. A lot of people are planting food. A lot refuse to. A lot live in a situation where they can't grow food. But I'm noticing more and more people I live out kind of in a rural area, and I'm noticing more and more people having gardens, which is a good thing. That's a good thing for everybody, because if they're producing their own food, then I don't have to worry about them so much coming to try to borrow food from me when everything goes down. Another thing that's going to hurt us is people don't know how to do things anymore. Most people don't even know how to change their oil in their car. A lot of people don't even know how to check the fluids in their car. A lot of people don't know how to cut their own grass, or they don't have the capability of cutting their own grass, so they pay a company 70, 80, $150 to come out and cut their grass for them, which, our grandparents would probably look at them like they were insane for doing that. You're paying somebody to cut your own grass for you, something you could easily do. Uh, People don't have basic mechanical skills. They can't work on anything. And a lot of the products that we have today, unlike what our parents and grandparents had and great grandparents had, a lot of that stuff could be easily repaired if needed. It was easy to work on and it could be repaired. Uh, a lot of the things today, a lot of the products made and sold in stores today, they're designed to break. They're not designed to last. They're designed to use it till it breaks, then go buy another one. So there's a lot of things that can't be repaired. A lot of things have gotten so complicated, so complex that you can't repair them easily. You have to have special training. And finally, unlike back during the Great Depression, where we had a very strong industrial manufacturing base, we no longer have that here in America. Yeah, we still have a little bit of manufacturing here, not much, but we do still have a little bit. But the bulk of the things that we need, we've shipped the majority of our manufacturing overseas. So we get the majority of our products from places like China. In fact, the majority of our stuff in general comes from China specifically. But there's other countries as well. So we don't have although we're seeing all these shortages in items, products, components, parts. Back then, somebody could just open up a factory and start producing. They could fill that need. We don't have that today. We don't have that capability today. Or if we do, it's in a very limited capacity. So we're not as resilient as a country as we used to be. And that's going to hurt us significantly when we do go into this next Great Depression. And I've listened to a bunch of people. I've talked to some people. There's a lot of people that expect China to invade Taiwan within the next 3 to 4 or 5 months. If they do that, our economy is going to take a major blow. Because if we actually get into a military conflict with China, understand that probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 90% of the stuff we use today comes from China, including medicines and medical supplies. If we get into a military conflict with China, do you honestly think they're going to continue to ship stuff over here to us? No. They'll sanction us the way we sanctioned Russia. Only the difference is their sanctions are going to be far more effective because we are so dependent on them. So we're going to be going through a Great Depression, I believe. Probably, I hate to put a time frame out there. I would say maybe within the next year. I hope I'm wrong. Please let me be wrong, but I'm expecting it to come. I honestly don't think we're in a point where the damage that we've seen done over the past 2 years can be repaired. The damage has been so severe and so widespread, it's going to take us years to dig out of this. Even if we don't go into a Great Depression, which I do believe we will, but even if we don't, I believe we're looking at a decades-long recovery from what's happened over the past 2 years. This is going to impact us for years to come. So I hope you're getting ready. I hope you're stacking food, storing food, producing food, building a network of people to trade with, to rely to call on for help when you need help. Um, Everything I'm trying to do here, I'm a single father. Uh, so I'm trying to do everything for the most part by myself. I'm doing it somewhat lone wolf because not because I want to, but because I don't know who else I can trust at the moment. And I'm very cautious about uh, reaching out to people and trying to build a MAG, a mutual assistance group, because at this stage of the game, I don't know who is out there to willing to legitimately work together, or if they're just trying to make contacts of people that they can uh, use as a resource, if you understand what I'm getting at. I don't want to be setting myself up to be a target to some opportunistic uh, predator. So security is foremost on my mind right now, with in terms of building a MAG or a support group here. So I have very few people I can rely on. I do have a little bit of family, but it's a very small group. And understand that what I've learned from this year alone is I can store food, I can store weapons and everything, but I can't do this alone. No one can. The amount of time it takes to work in a garden, if you're out there working in that garden and composting and doing things like that, working with animals, you have no time for security. And if you're worried all the time about security, then you have no time for the garden. And if you're spending all your time doing resources, looking for resources and collecting, harvesting those resources outside of your little property, be it scavenging or hunting, foraging, things like that. If you're spending time doing that, then that's time you're not spending on security or on your garden or on your livestock. There's just no way one person can do it all. We need to have people around us who can share the load, that can work together for a common goal. But we're very late in the game right now to be reaching out to strangers and trying to build a network of people we can count on. Now, I'm not saying don't do it. I'm not saying it's too late. I'm just saying we're so late in the game, you don't have the time to slowly ease into the conversations, kind of feel people out, get a sense of whether they can be trusted or whether they're more of a risk than an asset. But if you do this, if you reach out to people, if you try to build a group, you have to have security at the top of your list. It has to be of paramount importance. You have to take extra care that you're not setting yourself up to be a victim. And there are more people out there waiting to victimize someone than there are people willing to work as a team. So it's not too late, and I just watched a squirrel steal one of my peaches. That little thief. Oh. If you're going to do that, take precautions. Be careful. Go slow, but understand you can't do this alone. Nobody can. I'm quickly learning that. working the number of hours I am, I'm finding it impossible to do everything I need to do. The long hours I put in, I simply do not have the time left in the day to get everything that I need to do done. And that's concerning me more and more. So I've got to look at my options there. I've got to try to figure some things out. I used to think lone wolf would be a good way to go because I don't trust. I'm very I'm very reserved. I'm very quiet. I don't like being around other people. I'm not a very social person, to be honest with you. Despite being on camera, being on YouTube, uh, I'm not a very outgoing social person, and I have problems trusting people just from past experience. But I'm finding more and more that if the if the economy collapsed and if this country fell, I would be in a bad position because I have nobody really around me except for a couple of family members that I could count on, and that leaves me very vulnerable. And I'm becoming more and more aware of that. Anyway, I've already dragged this on for a lot longer than I thought I would. So I want to leave you with all that to think about. This is what's on my mind right now. The links will be in the description below. I appreciate you guys watching. Like, share, subscribe if you haven't. Continue to prep, folks. Continue to stack food. Store it up, everything that you can possibly afford to buy. You're going to need it sooner than later. And even if nothing happens, the food is there. You're going to eat it anyway. Or at least you should be if you rotate and store what you eat and eat what you store. That should be the way that goes anyway. So think of food storage as an investment, buying it cheaper now, knowing it's going to get more expensive later or more unavailable later. And even if nothing happens, hey, you've already got food there to eat that you don't have to buy in the future. So it's a win-win. But yeah, keep storing, keep stacking, producing if possible. Keep prepping, folks. Stay alert, stay vigilant. Watch out for each other when you can. That's all I've got. Until next time, folks, take care. I'll catch you later.